Hello my honeybees, my name is Shelby and today I'm going to be 100% completing Grounded. I have been putting this game off for so long because of my crippling fear of insects, but with Grounded 2 just around the corner, I decided it was time to finally brave the wilds of the backyard. To get all the achievements in this game, I'll have to finish the main story, explore the entirety of the backyard, collect all the creature cards, beat every boss in the game, and find a bunch of teeth? Well, with all my strange goals set in place, I hope that you'll join me in my adventure to uncover the dark secrets of the Ominent Technology Lab, and to become the one true queen of the backyard. I started up a new game, choosing Hoopy as my character since I like her funny shirt, and saw a news broadcast talking about 4 teenagers that had gone missing. Then panning over to the backyard, where a briefcase parachuted down, and as it landed, we emerged from inside it, seeing 5 tiny human shapes cut out into the foam padding. With no memory of how I got here, or even where here is, I began exploring. A little further up the path, there was a strange robotic voice, and I discovered the first research station, finding a file labeled Spacer Safety Test, overseen by Dr. Tully. I learned that the place we're in is the backyard of Dr. Tully himself. I also found a resource analyzer, and when I analyzed stuff found around the backyard, I unlocked recipes involving those materials as well as gaining some raw science, which won't be used for a little while yet. On top of the recipes and raw science, I gain a little bit of brain power each time I analyze something new. I can analyze 3 things before having to wait for the machine to recharge. A little further up from the research pod, I found a strange machine and had to punch a gnat until it exploded. Not sure why, but it chased me, so I feel like it's fair. I flicked the machine on, causing 3 beams to activate, but one of them was blocked by a giant blade of grass, or I guess a normal-sized blade of grass, and another one was weakened by something. While looking around for a solution to my problem, I found a log from Dr. Tully himself.
I was a fool to have ever doubted myself. A fool like Klein, like Kaminsky, like Schmechter, like all of Ominent. I am here in the backyard. Down in the backyard. I mean, I am speaking to you from the backyard. I am tiny!
He had also been shrunken down. He seems to be the inventor of this technology and was the first successful subject. After a close run-in with a pair of ants, I analyzed a pebblet, learning the recipes for my first 2 tools, the spear and the axe, meaning now I can cut down the blade of grass that's blocking one of the beams. I cut down the blade of grass blocking the beam and crafted a lean-to, which I guess is just a baby tent, and went to sleep for the night. The next morning I ventured to the top of the baseball and drank a dewdrop to hydrate myself. This is much more effective than drinking from the little muddy puddles you can find around the yard. I built a workbench out of some grass planks and sap so I can start making some more complex stuff like the clover armor and eventually a weevil shield. Oh, and a torch too, because this game follows the survival game tradition of nighttime and darkness just making you completely blind. I headed over to the weakened beam machine to see what was causing it, and it was a bunch of little lawn mites chewing on the wire. While I was clearing them out, I died, but honestly I don't know what killed me because I was in the inventory. While exploring deeper in the cave, I came across a stack of boulders which required a busting tool to break, and I never go far without my busting tool. I left the cave only to be ambushed by a massive bug spraying gas at me, so I did what any logical person would do, bolt in the other direction. I did, however, spot a ladybug who was far more pleasant. Now that all the beams are active, I can return to the machine and activate it, and the thin blue beams turned into something from Star Trek, which unfortunately seemed to overload the machine and caused an explosion at the base of the oak tree in the yard. On my way over to the oak tree, I found a little warbling pink orb, which gave me a bunch of raw science. A little further on, I came across my first spider, and let's say it's a good job I was wearing the brown pants. In an attempt to climb up on the grass to avoid the spider, it spotted me, leaving my only choice to run past it, only to be killed by the baby orb weaver. I will say, if you have severe arachnophobia, I would recommend you listen to this video rather than watch it. I quickly jumped back up, dusted myself off, changed my pants, and kept on going, deciding to take a different route to the oak tree this time in hopes to avoid the hell beast. I also used the peeper for the first time, and this is how I'll be getting all the creature cards. I need to use the peeper on every single creature in the game to scan them. When I finally reached the base of the oak tree, I found a secret lab with the name Ominent branded everywhere, the same company name mentioned in Dr. Tully's log and found on the laser machine. On a much less creepy note, I did find this dapper little robot named BURG.L, and he was very kind and very polite. He confirmed that the device used to miniaturize us was likely Dr. Tully's spacer device. Unfortunately, similarly to us, BURG.L was suffering from memory loss too. He said his memory banks were corrupted from the explosion, sorry BURG.L, and he explained that Dr. Tully created him to be a short-order cook of the future, but promoted him to act as a manager for his experiments. He also mentioned not having seen Dr. Tully for several weeks. BURG.L said that in order for him to remember how to fix the space device so we can unshrink and go home, we're gonna have to help him find his memory chips. There are two kinds of chips: auxiliary chips that will give us crafting recipes, and super chips with his memories on them. But of course, the lab locations were also missing from his memory banks. Luckily, he did have the location of the Hedge lab, so we're not completely fucked, only partially. But as if to pile on the bad news, the Hedge lab is used to research arachnid webbing, which means more spiders. Oh joy. With BURG.L's help, we can finally put the raw science to good use. He granted me access to the ASL terminals where we can trade in raw science for survival recipes. I wasted absolutely no time immediately heading over to the Hedge, and as soon as I got there, I was attacked by a new bug, a larva. This was the point where I realized food was something I'm gonna have to focus on getting a decent supply of very soon, since if you go below a certain threshold of hunger, your stamina gets halved. The easiest source of food early in the game is mushrooms, but they reduce health when they're eaten raw, so instead of that, I built a spit roast and killed a bunch of weevils so I can harvest and cook their meat. I also bought a recipe bundle from BURG.L with a bunch of base building stuff so I can start setting up something properly. I created the most basic little platform above the research station just to make things a little neater, and then made my way back over to the Hedge. I was gonna be ready for that lava this time. And I was. But I wasn't ready for the wolf spider that was also there. This is gonna be fun. I decided that an upgrade was probably needed before tackling the Hedge lab. I found the red ant hill and killed a bunch of soldier ants for their mandibles so I can craft a red ant club. I took a different path around the garden, keeping close to the pond's bank, and made my way back to the Hedge, finding another field station just up in one of the branches. There was also a juice box in the Hedge a little further up. Juice boxes and soda cans are scattered around the backyard and will have either juice or soda in them that I can use for hydration. I found a little zipline just past the juice box which took me over to the first part of the lab where I found my first robot-type enemy, the Ruz-T. He was basically half a BURG.L with much less class and no mustache. Further into the facility, I found a strange lever which of course I pulled. Luckily, this one didn't cause an explosion, but did activate the final piece of Ominent tech in the field stations, which allowed me to scan for analyzed materials in the area. This is going to make gathering stuff I need for weapons and armor so much easier. During my exploration of the Hedge lab, which seemed to be utterly destroyed, I found many more of Dr. Tully's logs, painting a grim picture of the effect his work was having on his marriage. His wife had asked him to leave his work for the day, which caused an argument for the ages according to him, before he reluctantly agreed to go on a family trip.
She just doesn't understand how important the work is. But in the end, all was not lost. As fate would have it, our little trip to Stormin Beach's Wave Park has given me fresh inspiration. A particular attraction sported a zip line over an undulating pool filled with sun-baked tubers, basking in the light of the cruel sun that baked them like red raisins. But I digress. It was the zip line that captured my imagination. Such an elegant solution to my problems in the Hedge. When we got home, it was straight back to work. After another argument, of course.
After what must have been an hour of searching, and so many deaths to spiders and tase-tees, which were just rusties with tasers, I got all 5 pieces to the password to log into the terminal and open up the door to BURG.L's first superdisk. I also found one last Dr. Tully log for the Hedge lab, which was unsettling, to say the least.
It is likely that this will be my last log from the Hedge lab. Regrettably, the spider infestation has only worsened. Last night, I had a close encounter with a giant broodmother that shook me to my core. Couple that with the strange radio signals I've been receiving, and I no longer think this facility is safe.
BURG.L here. Can I start you off with a double-charred barbarian bacon burger? It's made the Roby's way.
BURG.L, initiate evacuation protocols for the Hedge lab.
Is that really necessary, sir?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely necessary. We're being watched.
After that incredibly unnerving warning, it was straight back over to BURG.L to give him the super chip.
Ah, I am feeling much more like myself. Take it from me, there's nothing quite like a reverse lobotomy. Thank you.
After BURG.L's medical procedure was over, he gave me a rundown of the different labs where all the chips were going to be found. The pond lab, located at the bottom of the koi pond, was apparently focused on superfoods due to Dr. Tully's fascination with Brussels sprouts, which is an interesting hyperfixation, but to each their own. The haze lab's focus was on medical properties of mold and fungus at a microscopic scale. They had tried to engineer a new type of fungus, but it went wrong, causing the surrounding wildlife to get infected. And finally, the black ant lab, which is located under the sandbox and dedicated to studying raw science particles which apparently have a tendency to explode. And I'm sure me being told that isn't foreshadowing at all. I also have access to the recipes for tier 2 tools now, but they require drops from higher level bugs, which frankly I'm scared of. I decided I'd rest before taking on the next lab, but as I went to sleep I had a strange dream.
Please don't move, and look straight ahead. I promise you won't feel a thing.
It's a go for molecular reduction. Spacer is primed.
Where you are going, all your worries will seem so small.
While it didn't give much new information, it did confirm that Ominent played a large part in the spacer and shrinking us down, which I suppose is better than the no information we had yesterday. During my expedition to find stuff for new tools, I found the Red Ant Queen down in the anthill. There was an option to offer her a treat, but unfortunately I didn't have anything that she would accept, so I'll have to come back later. I headed back over to the Hedge to collect some berry fragments, but on the way over, I managed to get a Bombardier beetle to aggro on a ladybug, and this means one will kill the other one, so I can loot whichever one dies, and since I need parts from both, this is kind of a win-win for me. I let them each get the other low before finishing them both off and collecting their drops. This allowed me to get my first few upgrades, the first two parts of the acorn armor, a massive upgrade from the clover armor, and the insect axe, the tier 2 chopping tool. The next thing I needed before making my way down to the pond lab is the insect hammer. You'll remember I mentioned needing to find teeth around the map. They're called milk molars and mega milk molars, and can be broken open by a tier 2 busting tool and traded in at BURG.L's computer for permanent upgrades to my character. This however means I need stink bug parts, and a gas mask will make collecting stink bug parts 1,000 times easier. Unfortunately, this game has a very cruel sense of humor and enjoys laughing at the pain of its players, so the gas mask requires stink bug parts. I'm sure there's some kind of clever strategy they want you to apply here, but I just lured a stink bug over to the nearby red ant hill and got the soldier ants to kill it for me, and then I looted it and crafted the mask and killed another one manually. I also found something called a mixer nearby, which seemed to be a thing that I need to defend against waves of enemies. But after I activated it, a rogue mosquito attacked me, which was not supposed to be there, and I had to kill the mosquito and the mixer broke, so I'll just come back later. Now that I have my insect hammer, I should have gone to collect a bunch of milk molars, however, I immediately forgot. While grabbing a bunch of gnat fuzz to make a bow, I killed an orb weaver that attacked me and got an upsetting message. I moved past that, compartmentalizing it as I do with all of my fears, and found my first milk molar under a massive can of soda, although, again, I suppose it's just a regular can of soda. I spent the milk molar point on increasing my max stamina, and also found a mega milk molar in BURG.L's Oak Lab, which I spent on increasing my max arrow stack size for whatever reason. It was finally time to take the big dive into the pond, and the first thing I did was grab some lily pad wax from the underside of a lily pad to make a knife so I can harvest underwater plants. Now, before I go underwater, I want to make it clear that I am terrified of deep water. I am thalassophobia incarnate, and with that said, for all of you who keep asking me to play Subnautica, I will cry. I might do it one day for a milestone, but for now, you can all get to fuck. Anyway, my first attempt at finding the lab ended in drowning, so the game prompted me to craft fin flops and analyze eel grass. I grabbed some eel grass, killed some water boatman things for their fins, and crafted up some fin flops and a gill tube. I swam right to the bottom of the pond and then into a trench, past a drowned T-Rex, and I made it to the flooded halls of the lab, literally running on fumes of oxygen. In the first main chamber of the lab, there was another suspicious switch. This one, however, did nothing. I need to reset 3 breakers underwater in order for this one to do whatever explosion-based thing I'm sure it's gonna do. The 3 breakers were much more simple than I expected, with the exception of one that I died trying to get to because it was behind a mini maze and I have no sense of direction and I ended up drowning. When I finally reached the main lab, I found another log from Dr. Tully. He said that his doctor had told him he was in perfect health for someone 20 years older than he was. He figured out that the shrinking experiments were causing him to rapidly age, but decided that he would accept these side effects and carry on with his experiments. Once again, going against his wife's wishes, this man is husband of the year. A little further into the lab, there were a few Taze Ts and Arcas, which were a new kind of robot which shot electrical balls at me, guarding the terminal for the biodome and the BURG.L chip. Of course, I headed straight back to BURG.L, giving him the chip, and he informed me that the problem preventing the spacer from working was that the embiggening cell was broken. I'm gonna be honest, I am not convinced that he didn't just make those words up. BURG.L said that a specific chemical cocktail was needed to fill the spare cell so it can power the spacer.
There is both good news and the bad news. Which would you like to? The bad news is that the spare cell I have is empty. The good news was that I have a spare cell.
But of course this can't be made easy, and the recipe for the chemical cocktail is on one of his other chips. Because of course it is. Quick disclaimer, in between recording the first voiceover and second voiceover, I have gotten sick, so please excuse my voice throughout the rest of this video, and like and subscribe for me fighting the plague to bring you entertainment. After the pond lab had been completed, I decided I wanted to tackle one of the more annoying sounding achievements, building a mushroom brick base structure. Now, while this achievement isn't too difficult on its own, it does connect to another achievement to get 5-star coziness in a base, and so I'm going to have to build an actual base instead of just the structure. Before I got on with base building, I headed to sleep, only to be greeted by yet another dream of ominous technologies.
It's a go for molecular reduction. Spacer is prime.
All tucked in with the outfits and backpacks they were snatched in.
Body mass readout is an acceptable range. The skin fold degradation is minimal.
Specimen vitals are stable and holding. Looks like we've done it.
Great job, everyone. Let's set up 3 more trials for replication.
Sorry to crash your party. The Defense Department has arrived early to discuss Project Orc. The director needs you to be present at the meeting.
Not sure what's worse, our director or a 3-hour meeting with the military.
It's made clear that Ominent has a deal with the military who want an update on something called Operation Orc, and honestly, I don't think they could have picked a more evil-sounding name if they'd tried. Unfortunately, I found out that to make the mushroom bricks for the achievement, I'll need the oven recipe first, so I'll need to take on the haze lab. Before going to the haze lab, there are some crucial upgrades I need. Firstly, I can dive back down into the pond trench, into the breaker maze thing to loot a tiny skeleton to get the toxicology badge. This is a trinket that gives me 90% reduction to damage from gas and dust, meaning I probably won't need to wear a gas mask, I can just use regular armor inside the haze. I crafted a mosquito needle, which is a sword that has a lifesteal effect, a weevil shield that gives me better blocking, and a set of ladybug armor that required 1,000,000 berries for whatever reason. But it was worth it, since it gives me extra blocking strength, and with my new loadout I headed over to the haze lab. However, after my first run-in with an infected enemy, I realized the toxicology badge was definitely not enough, so I had to run back and grab my gas mask. I finally found a research station on the outskirts of the hazed area, allowing me to spend the milk molar and mega milk molar I found in the haze. Deeper into the deadly haze, I found the entrance to the lab, and bombed it open using one of the brat-burst bombs that I'd made. The first thing I found inside the lab was a letter from Dr. Wendell's wife, explaining that she couldn't take the heartbreak anymore. Dr. Tully's work had driven his wife away and was hurting his children. She couldn't bear the disappointment and pain on their kid's face night after night, and she had gone up north to stay with her sister. She wrote that she'll always love him, and signed off the letter by saying, "From your not-yet ex-wife." I'm very quickly growing to despise this man. Further into the lab, there was a flooded area, at the very end of which was a mega milk molar, which was definitely worth almost drowning for. I left the flooded cave going in the intended direction this time, and finding out that the infected bugs were much scarier than their regular counterparts. This infected ladybug was an absolute tank, and even the infected mites took 3 hits from my ant club. Luckily, it was all worth it, as the ladybug was guarding the super chip, as well as Dr. Tully's final log from the Haze lab.
This has gone poorly. Very, very poorly. The essence of failure, the pinnacle of its craft. Local fauna? Berserk! Mushrooms? Exploding! My condition? Like a baby toe after a long bath. BURG.L, are you there?
Is this a test?
Yes, BURG.L, it's a test. Now listen carefully. I'm abandoning this facility immediately. Initiate the Blazed Earth Protocol.
It had been made clear that his aging problem was getting worse, but he did give us information. That he had headed to the Black Ant Lab after initiating the Blazed Earth Protocol, destroying yet another of his labs. I walked back through the very first room of the lab as I was leaving and found another log. Dr. Tully mentioned that the more he shrunk down, the more he was becoming wrinkled and raisined as he described it. His skin had begun folding in on itself. But at this point he had fallen to the gambler's fallacy, saying that if he gave up now, he'd have nothing to show for it. No wife, no kids, no spacer, not even his own health. With this dark revelation, I turned to the same place I always do to lighten the mood. BURG.L. However, BURG.L wasn't overly helpful this time. He informed us that only part of the embiggening cocktail had been returned to his memory. As much as I love BURG.L, I was feeling the urge to turn him into a toaster. However, now that I'd gotten the Super Haze chip, I can buy the recipe to get the mushroom brick stuff. So it's time for some base building. But of course, as I headed to sleep for the night, I was greeted by yet another dream. This one far more ominous than the others.
Dr. Schmechter, these...
Director.
Director Schmechter. These specimens are the breakthrough we've been looking for, just like you predicted. We're close to eliminating the raisioning problem. Our team was up all night recalibrating the spacer.
I see. Of course, my hypothesis was correct. I hope all of you remember this moment the next time you question my methods. Now then, what progress has been made on covalent space expansion? How did Dr. Wendell Tully, a lifetime failure, best the brightest minds at Ominent?
Yes, sir. We're still working on that formula. I know it's been months, but the embiggen process is far more complicated and dangerous than we predicted.
Ugh. Too bad for you, little ones. Prepare the specimens for termination.
This isn't what I signed up for.
It was clear Director Schmechter was responsible for the kidnappings and the experimentation on the kidnapped children, trying to find a solution for the raisioning issue. He wanted to terminate the subjects of the experiment, casually asking your scientists to kill kids, but the lady scientist who had been running the experiments seemingly had begun to develop a conscience. Moving past that massive information drop, I wanted to build a pretty house, which meant I needed to gather some new materials I hadn't seen yet. I made my way over to the barbecue swell biome, where I ran into my next problem. In order to safely gather the charcoal chunks that I need to get some fire resistance, meaning I need antlion armor, the fresh defense mutation, or eat a case of de-antlion. The most readily available of these options was the mutation, which I can get from eating a bunch of mint shards. I ate 10 mint shards that I had gathered from the nearby mint box, giving me the maximum level of the fresh defense mutation. On my way over to the sandbox to grab some antlion armor, I found my way to the top of the picnic table, to this very cool Dungeons & Dragons maze-like playset, which I will almost definitely be using as a base at some point. I climbed back down the shovel where I found an exposed pipe, inside of which was a key to a Minotaur maze chest, which I can only assume is in the Dungeons & Dragons maze. Anyway, I found the Black Anthill lab and completely forgot about my goal of getting antlion armor and headed inside. I found a locked part of the lab, but by following the wire on the top of the tunnel, I found a cracked rock that I could bomb to get inside of the lab that seemed to be completely locked down. Within the first part of the main lab, we came across a log from Dr. Tully. He was ambushed while going over the results of his experiments. The ants broke into the lab, causing Dr. Tully to initiate a lockdown. Luckily, using some terminals, we can manually open up both the A and B sector of the lab. In Sector A of the lab, there was yet another log. Dr. Tully had begun to mentally cave, the failure after failure slowly breaking down his psyche, destroying his self-confidence. It seemed as if he had begun to become resigned to his fate of failure. I had to head back to base to grab some more explosives, but because I had finally found a piece of gum, I headed up to the top of the weed killer spray can and plugged it up, meaning the hazed area is no longer covered in toxic fumes. After making my way back, I bombed the glass wall of the lab and was rushed by the first proper boss we'd seen, the assistant manager. This fight was surprisingly tricky. He activated a lot of different stuff, lasers, Tesla coil traps, and he was stupidly tanky. Luckily, because my armor was pretty strong, all the projectiles didn't do a whole lot, and after I killed him, he dropped the assistant manager's keycard, which unlocks a whole bunch of different doors for us around the map. But before we go back to BURG.L's, I found one last locked door, which can only be opened after I complete all 8 of the mixers found around the map. There was also one last log left by Dr. Tully, showing he had clearly given in to the madness, his paranoia completely taking over. He had initiated a full lockdown and fled his lab yet again. I was adamant that before returning to BURG.L, I'd build my mushroom abode. To do this, I'd have to get into the sandbox to make the antlion armor, which means I'll have to make 17 silk ropes to activate the zipline from the picnic table to the sandbox. The annoying part about this is that each piece of silk rope takes 2 minutes and 22 seconds of real-world time, and each machine can only make 1 at a time. After a ridiculous amount of waiting, I headed back to the picnic table, but before fixing the zipline, I grabbed the Minotaur chest, which was honestly a little disappointing. A few rocks, a recipe chip, and a mega milk molar. I repaired the zipline and flew down to the sandbox, where I discovered yet another mini-lab. There was a log inside, this one much more harrowing than any other. It showed that Dr. Tully was finally coming to terms with his hubris and arrogance. He spoke about how he was barely human now, wrinkled and brazened, less than the very insects he now calls his peers. He is diverting all resources to find a cure for the raisinification. He resented his choices, the very choices that left him a failure, not only as a scientist, but as a husband, and as a father. His small, shriveled stature now matching what was left of his legacy. After leaving the lab, I found a hidden melted moat key buried in the sandbox. I of course used it to open the melted moat chest in the moat of the sandcastle, inside of which was the recipe for the first level 3 weapon, the Salt Morningstar. This is the first time we've seen a weapon have a built-in type like this. Almost all enemies have a weakness or resistance to a certain flavor type, those being salty, spicy, fresh, or sour, as well as non-flavor based types of damage like infection, poison, and venom, which, despite sounding very similar, are all individual types. I headed back to my little platform and crafted up some antlion armor, then turned right back around and headed back over to the barbecue spill where I collected a whole bunch of charcoal and decided to explore further up where I found the wood pile. I'll have to come back here later for a boss, but for now it's not all that helpful. For my mushroom base, I decided to do it on a lily pad in the koi pond since it's so near to the oak lab. But before that, I headed down to the red ant queen since I can make her a sandwich now, and she gave me a cute little ant friend. I love him so much. I finally cobbled together my little mushroom bungalow, and the reason there is so much shit everywhere is because eventually we're gonna have to go for that coziness level 5. We're sat just below level 4 now, but we'll tackle that later. For now, it's finally time to pay BURG.L another visit. Unfortunately, when he plugged in the final super chip, we were met with 2 bits of awful news. The first being that the embiggening cocktail requires toenails, gross, and the other being that the final piece of the recipe was missing. Again, of course it is. It turns out that Dr. Tully had wiped the last ingredient purposefully in case Omninan ever got their hands on this tape. But for once, BURG.L actually had some good news. Dr. Tully's Scabby had a built-in tracker, so if he's still alive somewhere in the yard, we can find him and get the recipe. As I went to sleep that evening, I had yet another dream.
Outfits and backpacks they were snatched in. As requested, they're strapped and synced with Scabbies for whatever they might run into down there. You do realize the director will have our heads if he finds out we're removing company property?
Can you sleep at night with what this company's doing? We need to do something.
Is Dr. Tully even alive? The field team reported him missing months ago. You are prolonging the inevitable.
Wendell, wherever he is the only hope for these kids. I'll make the delivery to his yard discreetly. No one is even going to know.
I hope you know what you're doing.
The lady from the lab who was having second thoughts was the one who put us in the briefcase with the scabby watch. She had sent us to the yard so we could find Dr. Tully and get us unshrunk. I wanted to make a stop over near the barbecue area to do an event for a weapon called the Spicy Coal Tana. However, I got my ass kicked by this event, so I decided I was due for an upgrade. I headed home and crafted up the Mint Mace, which the Ladybug Lava from the event are weak to since it does fresh damage and busting damage, both of which they are weak to. And yeah, the Mint Mace made it so much easier. I decided I also wanted to run around and try and finish all the mixes after my success in the coal bag. You might be wondering why I'm putting off the story so much. That's because there's an achievement for getting a 100% score on the final report card after growing big. And there are a lot of requirements to getting a 100% report, so I really need to start doing as much as I can. Especially since I don't know if there will be a point of no return for the story. I crafted up the Spicy Coal Tana, giving me the second of 4 weapons I want to make before I take on the 3 optional bosses around the yard. I want 1 for each flavor type. I already have the Mint Mace for fresh and the Spicy Coal Tana for spicy. I already have the recipe for the Salt Morningstar, but the Acid Edge, which is the sour weapon, I won't be able to get for a little while. I hunted down and killed my first Black Ox Beetle. This guy is the key to the level 3 hammer. However, to get the pupa leather that is also required for the upgraded hammer, we need an upgraded axe. Which means we're going to need termite chompers, which means I need to take on the little woodpile dungeon next. With that in mind, I crafted the last of the weapons I can for now, the Salt Morningstar, since I don't know what the termites are weak to. And despite really not wanting to, I wandered over to the woodpile and found the termites. It turns out their weakness is salty, so it's a good job I crafted the Morningstar before I came. And while I did get the chompers, the lower levels of the woodpile were blocked off by splinters that require the level 3 chopping tool to get rid of. I made my new hammer and axe and started to take on the mixers, and honestly, they were so much more difficult than I expected. Even the easier ones took me a few tries. Eventually, I realized I was allowed to build around them, so I brought a bunch of mushroom bricks and just put a few walls up around each mixer before getting started. I did decide to leave the 3 super mixers for later though, since they are much tougher. In other news, I spent what must have been at least 2 hours trying to scale the garden wall to reach this research station. While I haven't been pointing out most of the milk molars I've been collecting, I do want to point out this cluster of 5 of them which I found in a bottle labeled milk molars, which means I think they're vitamin things, which makes so much more sense than just finding 123 teeth scattered throughout a backyard. To everyone's delight, I had finally run out of ways to procrastinate the main story, so I crafted up a Black Ox crossbow and made a bunch of sour arrows since it's the only damage type I don't have, and then headed to the shed to find Dr. Tully's Scabby. At this point, I've been upgrading my armor and weapons at the smithing station for a while, so my main weapon, the Mint Mace, and my armor are both at level 8. This gives the Mint Mace extra damage and a special shatter ability that activates on the final hit of a combo. And my armor has the sleek style, which means it provides some extra healing. I made my way up to the side table next to the chair by the shed, reluctantly gathered some toenails from the ashtray, and fixed Dr. Tully's Scabby, which immediately loaded another audio log. One detailing Dr. Tully's grim fate and his final goodbye to his wife and 2 children. Hearing that audio log gave us new focus. Find Dr. Tully. Save him, if possible. Trust me, I have no qualms with letting him pay for his stubbornness, but his family deserve better. And so I will do all I can to make sure he gets to make it up to them. As I worked my way into the undershed, I found a massive black widow who I just ran past for now, but we will be back later for. Past it, I found the true undershed lab, and another log from Dr. Tully, as well as progression pictures of the raisoning process.
Defeat. Failure. Countless infusions. Countless migraines. I'm so shriveled now I can barely walk. And the true origin of raw science? Ooh, an enigma. A mystery box with no lid. I don't think I have much longer. It is hard to think straight. I am so tired. I have only one option that remains. One last toss of the proverbial dice. Commence Project Mant.
Truthfully, Operation Mant doesn't fill me with optimism, and as I made my way further into the lab, there were clanging and smashing noises followed by feral roars. And as I finally reached the end chamber of the lab, I saw the Mant through the containment glass, and our battle began. Honestly, the Mant was much easier than the assistant manager. Since there were less projectiles and I'm actually decent at the blocking mechanic now, I took him down fairly easily. Dispatching the Mant allowed me to open up the final door of the lab, being greeted by a familiar voice. I opened up the chamber and was finally face to wrinkled, gruesome face with Dr. Tully himself. Dr. Tully said the fact that I wasn't showing signs of raisening after a month of being shrunk meant that Schmechter likely found a cure to it. He also informed us that the missing ingredient of the embiggening cocktail was grilled science. Dr. Tully gave us the grilled science he had left and opened the lab up, showing his true colors, not an evil, twisted, or hateful man, but one undone by a constant pursuit of success, one who had been taken advantage of by a cruel corporation which had broken his spirit, a man desperate to prove he was better than those who meant to undermine and take his life's work. And so it was decided. Dr. Tully will be saved. We will find Director Schmechter, and a man as evil as Schmechter can only be in one place. The evil castle playset above the pond. I brought Dr. Tully down to the pond house and told him to wait here. But of course, as I dropped down into the Moldork castle, he was waiting for me at the door of the lab, confirming that it belonged to Schmechter, and that he had been spying on both me and Dr. Tully. He called BURG.L up, who hacked open the lab's door, and in we went. There, we found Director Dalton Schmechter deep in the lab. He confirmed that he had found the cure for the raisening, and that young people were not only resistant to raisening, but entirely immune to it. The Schmechter fight was actually super challenging. It was like a majorly buffed up assistant manager fight, more lasers, more electric orbs, and little minions that he could summon. It took a few tries, but eventually I got there. Killing Schmechter gave me the Orc Disc as well as the recipe for the final weapon that I wanted, the Acid Edge. I crafted and upgraded the Acid Edge, and then it was onto our checklist for 100%. To get a 100% report at the end of the story, there are a few things I need to do, and I'm going to start with the hardest in my opinion, the super mixers. Some people say that this is pretty easy, but because the enemies attack from so many different directions at once, it's pretty hard. Especially since I am not good at multitasking. I haven't gained that female superpower from my transition yet. While doing one of the super mixers, I was launched multiple thousands of meters in the air and somehow didn't die when I landed, but it did make me fail the mixer, so I'm kinda mad about it. I finished up all the mixers and they were all fairly tricky. The worst was the one up by the wheelbarrow in the top right of the yard since it had flying enemies. But a few tips I have if you're struggling with the super mixers. Build a mushroom wall around it and keep a repair tool on your hotbar. This way you can fix up the walls that have been cracked and broken in between the waves of enemies. Also, make sure you've done the regular small mixers first, since you get a perk called Guard Dog which increases your damage during protection events and is so helpful. The next thing on my little expedition list was all the milk molars and mega milk molars. I currently have 25 out of 78 milk molars and 12 out of 45 mega milk molars. As I'm sure you could guess, this was just 5 hours of me wandering around and collecting teeth. So to save you from losing your will to live like me, I will skip this segment. My final mega milk molar took me to the first boss, technically. I mean, the Termite King isn't listed as a boss, but he is a unique enemy with unique drops and only spawns here, so I'm counting it anyway. I killed him and grabbed the final Mega Milk Molar, which means I now have all of the permanent upgrades. I then grabbed a yummy gum sandwich and a tasty toe jam sandwich. Trust me, I'm as disgusted as you are. But I took them down to the Black Ant Queen and Fire Ant Queen respectively and got a baby Black Ant pet and a baby Fire Ant pet. This gave me the Royal Arrangement achievement. You can also choose to poison or infect the ant queens, but I wanted the baby ant pets, so I chose to befriend them. My next collectathon was grabbing all 51 Scabby flavor schemes. I am still missing one since you can't get it until right before you're about to be unshrunk. But now, with all the collectibles firmly secured in my seemingly endless pockets, there is very little left to do. The optional bosses are our next task, and I'd like to be very clear, if you're arachnophobic and have not minimized this video yet, 2 of these bosses are massive spiders, one of those being the first one, the Hedge Broodmother. I crossed the flying disc bridge in the tree and entered her domain, placing the Broodmother BLT in her nest to summon her. Honestly, she wasn't too bad. She's super weak to my Cold Harness, and she's weak to both spicy and slashing damage, and also she's supposed to be fought roughly at the same time you do the Black Ant Lab, so I was pretty late to this fight. The Wasp Queen was next, and she was far trickier than the Hedge Spider. Since she flies around, I can't just wail on her in the same way I could the Spider. She also has a lot of ranged attacks which cause AoE venom puddles, and she spawns regular wasps as minions which also have a poison-based ranged attack. Then was the Mantis, and this was the most fun fight in the entire game. The enemies up to this point have been generally fun, but a lot of them follow a similar moveset. The Mantis is so much different. He's a lot faster, a lot more aggressive, and has this really cool shockwave attack that's unique to him. I had so much fun with this fight, but I do think they should make him a little more resistant to arrows since it was a pretty hard counter to all of his attacks to just stay far away and shoot him. Before I fought the infected Broodmother, which is the hardest fight in the game, I cleared up my coziness achievement, reaching level 5 by building as much shit as I could in the general vicinity of my home. I also decided I would take on as many of BURG.L's quests as I could, and definitely not because I was scared of the big mushroom spider. Not at all. Anyone who says differently is a big liar. I am a big brave girl. Anyway, the BURG.L quests weren't too bad. They mostly consisted of crafting or making certain items and structures, with a few hunting and flag raising quests weaved in. My biggest worry now for the endgame is getting enough raw science to buy out BURG.L's shop. I need roughly 35,000 more, so I had to make a plan. Firstly, my ladybug armor and various weapons felt like they were lagging behind a little, so I decided to make an upgrade. I made 2 Scythes of Blossoms, making 1 mighty and 1 fresh, and a set of sleek assassin's armor. All of this is crafted from the boss drops from the Mantis, so I'm going to do everyone a favor and skip over the intense farming. I built a scent wafter and filled it with Black Widow drops, and for every successful defense I was getting roughly 6,000 raw science. So while it took a while, I got there eventually and bought out BURG.L's shop. Which means I was finally forced to confront my biggest fear, the infected Broodmother. So with my ass clenched tight and enough smoothies in my backpack to make a fitness influencer cream their pants, I headed off. I summoned the spider using the moldy sandwich and got to work. And it was easy. I absolutely melted her health bar. Until she got back up. With a bigger health bar. Okay, no problem. I'll just do it again. A little closer this time, but still fine. Oh, fuck. Once more, is it? Right then. I got my ass kicked by the 3rd phase so many times. There is a reason this is called the hardest fight in the game. It did take me 4 tries, but I got there eventually. The big problem with this fight was the fact that your damage and defense both get debuffed, and on top of that there are constant spore clouds that block your vision, which make it borderline impossible to see when it's charging or doing its jump attack, so blocking was near impossible. Regardless of my sadness and stress from that fight, it is time to head up to the Java-matic and get ready to end our journey. I grabbed Dr. Tully, planted the cell in the Java-matic, put the mixture in the machine, and fired it up. But of course it couldn't be that easy. Samantha decided to break the power cells I needed for the machine to work. Honestly, the actual defense event was ridiculously easy. Literally all I had to do was put 2 walls in front and behind each mixer module, and after far too long a time, I succeeded easily. I grabbed the cell, Dr. Tully told me something that would make BURG.L jealous.
You might be the best assistant I've ever had, but don't tell BURG.L that.
And it was time to head back to the spacer. But first, there was one last thing I needed to do to make sure I got that 100% on my little report card. I grabbed the final file and scabby scheme from inside the remixer, did one last quest for BURG.L, and headed to the spacer. It's time to go home. Now, there are technically 2 more quests, one for activating the remixer and one for completing a New Game Plus run, but those seem kinda pointless since I've just played the entire game. Rest assured, I will play through again and get those in my own time for fun, but I actually want to take my time and enjoy this game properly the next time around. And with that, our tale ends. Dr. Tully was healed, Schmector was arrested, and Ominent destroyed. I think Dr. Tully's story is one that so many people can relate to. Sometimes in the hunt for perfection, we lose what really matters. Happiness. Both ours and the people that we love. Sometimes it's okay not to be perfect. Take a break. Be human. And yes, I do realize how ironic it is that this message is being delivered by a girl who just spent a week getting perfection in a video game. But regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. It took a while to do and I genuinely loved it so much. As usual, there was a lot of fun lore I skipped over and you should definitely play it for yourself if you can. But until next time, I've been Shelby. Remember to like, subscribe, and join the Discord in the description to keep up to date with uploads. And leave a comment telling me which game I should 100% next. Goodbye, my honeybees.